There were enough officers on the scene of the Uvalde school massacre to stop that gunman 3 minutes after he entered the building. This is according to official testimony coming today from Texas Public Safety Chief Colonel Steve McGraw. This is during this hearing that's happening now in Texas in the state Senate on the tragedy. Multiple responding police officers were armed with rifles and ballistic shields when they went inside Robb Elementary School 19 minutes after the shooter entered. The first surveillance images released reveals authorities stood in the hallway and waited for 1 hour to breach the classroom where the gunman carried out his mass shooting on May 24th. Some people wondering what took so long. The Washington Examiner reporting as well that Uvalde School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo was planning on not attending a hearing yesterday on the investigation by the Texas House Committee. He doesn't seem to want to be seen. Arredondo's department has faced sharp criticism for the long response time to the shooting. Let's talk about this now and welcome in retired CIA officer and FBI Special Agent Tracy Walder. Great to have you with us, Tracy.
Thank you for having me, John.
You know, it's easy for those of us who don't carry a gun and badge to work every day to second guess these officers. And a lot of us did that immediately afterwards. But now that we're hearing this testimony and we get to see the surveillance footage, I don't know how you don't criticize these officers for not doing more. What's your read on all this?
I completely agree with you. I mean, the whole point of carrying the badge and gun is that you are trained to react differently. Yes, folks that have not been trained in law enforcement, I would fully understand their need to preserve their life. That's a normal response. But you know, when I trained at Quantico and when I trained at the farm, the whole point is to train that out of you and to increase your situational awareness so that you're running to a threat and rather than away from a threat. And also, we have to remember that these police officers, they did have a SWAT team there, and then they also have probably been trained in the advanced law enforcement rapid response training, which is the active shooter training that a lot of Texas police departments receive. So there's to me really is no excuse for what we're seeing.
And you have to wonder if we are learning anything from these mass shootings, because again, this sounds so familiar to what happened in Parkland, where you had officers on the scene, particularly the school resource officer at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, Scott Peterson. He did not respond in time. And you know, I know there after action reports and seminars that are done on these types of things. You also have parents that were trying to rush into school, and they're not trained in this same type of way. So the question, I guess, is, are we learning anything from these mass shootings?
That's actually a great question and a really interesting comparison. You know, I think that the short answer to it is it seems like we're not, right? If something like this has happened again, where we have police officers not really running to the threat, especially now that I see them armed with ballistic shields, it's really just enraging. I don't know how they could have stayed out there in the hallway for as long as they did. I think we need to think about, you know, perhaps spending more money on situational awareness training for police officers and police departments, and really looking at what their training programs look like. Yes, it needs to include weapons training and tactical training, absolutely, but it also probably needs to include more in regards to situational awareness training.
You know, I think also another important aspect of this is leadership, right? And we have this police chief, Arredondo, who, according to some reports, did not want to show up. He has not been present. He's been a little cagey when he's been confronted by the press before. What kind of grade would you give this guy in terms of leadership and transparency on this?
I mean, not to be trite, I would give him a failing grade. And it's interesting because, you know, if we compare it with Parkland, for example, in that county, that police chief really did come out and really strongly denounced the behavior of that officer. And we are not seeing that here at all. He is not leading by example. And quite frankly, he needs to be stepping down probably from his city council seat as well, because that's probably a conflict of interest. And, you know, I'm sure he feels upset and guilty about what happened. But, you know, really, what about the parents of the kids that were killed? I think we need to really be thinking about that as well.
Yeah, this is a question I posed to former New York City Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik a while back. Where is this Chief Arredondo? And he just said, you know, the way it works, John, he is so far in this now. He's a subject to the investigation, likely a suspect. If the FBI is investigating here, he might have some culpability on his hands. So he's in a position where he can't really speak up, which I think is sad, because the parents, the victims here, the survivors, the loved ones, they lose out when they can't get these answers. And I know even some parents, I think, were kept out of some portions of that hearing yesterday. So I just can't stop thinking about those and the loved ones that they've lost, and how painful this still must be for them.
I would imagine it's incredibly painful, probably coupled with the fact that really there's a lot of silence and kind of questioning going on, and they really don't have a clear picture about what happened, and they're not hearing a clear and concise message, in terms of leadership from really one singular source. It's got to be incredibly frustrating and probably re-victimizing to them.
Yeah, Tracy, great to see you. We appreciate your insight on this. Thanks so much.
Thank you.